Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the MuseCast. I am so excited today. We've got Dan, like we always do. He's still down in Florida. I'm Shawna Boren. But you guys, today we have Mr. Jerry Poindexter with us. Jerry, you're down in Florida right now too, I believe. And so for those of you who watch our live streams, you have seen Jerry from time to time leading worship, and those are always some of my favorite Sundays. And then for those of you locals, you all know and love Jerry. He is a tried and true stalwart member of our community, and we absolutely adore him. So Jerry, welcome to you. We're glad that you're here today.
Thank you, Shawna.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering, how are you fine gents doing? Like 2022, we're, 25 days in. Is it going good for you so far? You feeling good? You're both down in a sunshiny state while I'm up here freezing, and some massive wind chill, but that's okay. How has 2022 gone for you all so far?
Yeah, I'll let Dan answer first.
All right, sounds good. Well, yeah, we are both in Florida. We're actually just like an hour away from one another, so we're gonna try and see if we can do like a lunch meeting while we're down here. But 2022 started off pretty good. I'm down here for health reasons, and that seems to be going really well. So very happy about that. And I'm looking forward to this year. I'm looking forward to continuing through the Sermon on the Mount series. And we got a couple other series that I'm really looking forward to. We're also, as a church, kind of we're trying to think of more ways that we can connect with parishioners from around the world. And I'm part of that. And I'm really looking forward to some of the ideas that we have there. So far, after 2020 and 2022, I don't want to say I don't want to jinx it, even though as a Christian I don't know if I can believe in jinxes or not. I'll have to think about that. But so far so good is what I would say.
Yeah. How about you, Jerry? Yeah. So far so good.
Dan. Yeah, so far so good. It's the cold snap that hit the rest of the country. I just assumed, especially since some friends of mine were just down on the Gulf side, and we're Dan and I are both on the Atlantic side, and so I just assumed that Florida's Florida. It's going to be warm and sunny. No, they're experiencing a bit of the cold snap too. I mean, nowhere near what the frozen chosen in Minnesota are experiencing, but
cry me a river, Jerry.
Oh,
cry me.
Come on, we've had the lows in the 30s, and we brought is swimming trunks and shorts and t-shirts here. I'm still wearing some of my warm stuff that I flew on the plane here. The highs are only in like the 60s, and so it's still worth the trip.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be praying for you both, you poor men. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I after
if you
2020.
didn't want to hear my violin, you shouldn't have.
I know. Do it with the harmonica next time, Jerry. Do it with the harmonica. No, like you guys, like after 2020 and 2021, I was like cautiously, I was one of those, I was like, let me do like the 14-day free trial, and then I'll let you know where I stand on 2022. So yes, I'm cautiously optimistic, ever faithful and hopeful because of who we serve, but sometimes like how that plays out here on earth is a little sketch. So I'm just, moving forward trepidatiously and just, taking it a day at a time. But still, I have some rays of hope for this year. We always have hope. We know that, but you guys know what we're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Well, this past weekend, we kind of wrapped up our MLK 2-week celebration recognition time with having a panel where we responded to questions that had come in from the congregation. And I felt on Sunday morning, like as we were praying together as a team and everything, I really felt like I needed people to know that these were genuine questions that came in from the congregation. Like sometimes we'll get questions in and then we have some that we've saved from previous times, but these were all that have come in as a result of Greg's Forces of Light sermon, and because we said we were going to be having a panel. And we asked them in the way in which they were sent in, because we really wanted to get the perspectives of where people are and what they asked. So that was a really, I think, a fun, eventful, good, hopefully informative time. So Dan, your summary is going to be a little different because it's kind of hard to summarize a panel. And then we're just going to kind of kick around some of those questions and just talk a little deeper and maybe get some different perspectives from these guys as well. So Dan, you can take it away. Yeah.
So it's definitely not a summary, and panelry sounds really weird. So I don't want to say that. I don't even know what that even means. But the other thing I want to do is I do want to summarize. Basically what I would do is I want to just summarize the questions that we talked about and give you guys an opportunity to speak into those. And then also we have Jerry with us today, because Jerry, and this is going to blow people's minds, but maybe I shouldn't even say, I didn't ask Jerry's permission on this, but let me just say that Jerry was around in the 1960s. I know he doesn't look old enough to be around in the 1960s, but he was, and he has memories from then. And I really want to pick his brain on some of his experiences growing up in the 60s and living through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and all of the different chapters of kind of the racial story of America. And so definitely want to do that. But the panel, it wouldn't really, usually when I'm on a panel, it goes really fast because I have so much fun. And this time watching the panel went really fast because I was just really captivated by everybody's perspectives and everybody's opinions. And so the panel was basically Shawna and Dylan and Cedric and Greg, and they answered several questions. Kind of the big questions that they answered was this: how should I engage as a white person? How should I engage in race conversations? Because a lot of times you end up, especially when you're talking with Christians, about this pressure to focus on the gospel, not on wokeness. And so that was one of the questions. The next question was, what lessons should we take from Dr. King today to address the power of white supremacy in our culture today? Because in some ways it doesn't seem like we're making much progress. And so the question is do we just ditch Dr. King, or is Dr. King still right? What do we take from that? What do we do with where we're at right now in light of that? Number 3, why does race discussion always lead to white blaming? This is somebody's experience. They felt like whenever you talk about race, there's always this guilt for being white that they experience. And then finally, what gives you optimism or hope right now about racial reconciliation and sort of the race story that we're continuing in? So those were some of the big questions. I can't go into all the answers, partly because I'm still processing some of those answers myself. So, but I'll leave those questions. And Shawna, I know that there was questions that you couldn't get to, and I want to give Jerry an opportunity to speak into any of these. Yeah. And also Shawna, if you have anything that you wanted to add that you didn't get to on Sunday, I want to give you that opportunity as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I've gotten further questions wanting further just dialogue about was actually that first question, which we thought would just be a quick thing for Greg to answer. And it's the question about, as a white person who wants to engage in conversations regarding race, but whenever the fear is whenever they're talking to other Christians, it always becomes this debate of, nope, we need to just focus on the Gospels and not being woke. And so there were some people who reached out and was like, I would love it if you guys would talk about that more on the MuseCast. I think people are getting used to us doing some of that. So I would love, because we just heard from Greg on that one. So I would love to get either of your perspectives, both Dan as a white guy, I mean, I don't know if you guys can tell, Dan's a white guy, and Jerry is not. And so I think it would be great to get both of your perspectives on that. Like, is there a danger of not focusing on the gospel and focusing on woke? And we really, on Sunday, try to talk about what woke is and what that means, because some people get tripped up just even on the word. And so you can't engage in conversation. And so I'm curious, like, do you guys feel like the church is too woke and we should focus more on the gospel? I'm really curious to see what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I'll wade in first, and then Dan, you can help me. I'm not being a white guy, you know. I don't. That whole perspective is actually not that lost on me. I guess what I would be leery of is, first of all, catchphrases.
Yeah.
We are inundated with catchphrases, and I don't know if it's a millennial thing or what, but we I think as Americans, we always want to shorten things. You know, we want to give nicknames to things so that we can quickly identify it and shorten the conversation. You know, so if you know, if your name is Nicholas, you're going to be Nick. You know, and on and on and on. But so there's a something to watch out for there, because we think we know what somebody is talking about when they say woke or use one of those catchphrases, and people and ideas are way more complex than any kind of catchphrase. And so I loved when I can't remember who it was that said, "Please ask, what do you mean by it when you say that?" Yeah. You know, and Greg was the first one that woke me up to I didn't want to say that. But he's the first one that he said he didn't even like to be called Christian, because and then the word Christian didn't even come into the Bible. It was a slur. Yeah, well, they were called Christians at Antioch because that was they're one of them, you know. That was the whole idea. So he says, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. You know, I follow some of a lot of the principles of Jesus Christ as closely as I know how to. That's
yeah. Thank you, Jerry.
I think the three of us, being older Christians, can all agree that it's the millennials' fault. I agree with that 100%. It's all of the problems are because of that. No, I'm kidding, of course. You know, I think that for me, you know, woke, the idea is that you wake up to something that you were asleep to. I mean, that's kind of what the word is used for. And you know, I think as a Christian, as you're trying to live out the gospel, part of the gospel is that we live in a dark world and we are supposed to be light of the world. And so by definition, we should be a people who are always waking up to new darknesses. That's almost the definition of what a Christian is. Being a light to the world is things that were once dark become exposed. And so to say that, you know, we should focus on the gospel instead of being woke, I don't think you can focus on the gospel without talking about waking up to darkness. And so, you know, I'll say that. I do think that there are people who, you know, probably abuse that, you know, who are, you know, they're angry, they're hurt, they're bitter, and no, you know, they tend to kind of like, I don't know, maybe not handle their frustrations with race stuff with tact. But I don't think as white people, we should let that type of thing, people that we don't like, keep us from an open mind about some of these things. You know, I just listened to Michelle Alexander's the New Jim Crow. And I mean, some of the things in there that I had no idea about. It does feel like waking up. I mean, it's like I just had no idea that those things happened. They didn't teach these things in high school, and so it does feel like waking up, and I think it's a good thing. But it is scary. I mean, I think a lot of white people are afraid, and they're afraid of white guilt. They're afraid of being blamed. They're afraid of culture changing too fast. You know, people in general tend to fear change, but especially people who are privileged, they tend to fear change even more because change now is a risk to their privilege. And so it is very scary, but I don't think that that fear is inconquerable. I think that we're all going to be okay if we treat one another with love and keep an open mind and an open heart. And I don't know. Overall, I'm optimistic, but
yeah.
I
would say don't really quickly. I would just say don't avoid the dialogue if you feel like it's just going to get into a debate. Like, try to work past that, because we're not going to get anywhere if we continue to be afraid of the dialogue and just sit in our own ideas, in our own thoughts, in our own opinions without engaging. So don't be afraid of the dialogue, even if you feel like it may get to a place where you don't want it to get. Just be aware of that and push forward. Jerry, I cut you off. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. All I wanted to say, I agree with what Dan says. That I like the definition of waking and being woke, but the thing about catchphrases is they connotate extremely fast in this culture. We're 20 minute. What is the news cycle? I can't remember. It's really short though.
It is.
Yeah, and because of that, and because of all the screen time that we're raised with, and each generation gets more screen time, I think we connotate really terms and definitions really fast, and so it doesn't help us to continue to use those same catchphrases and those same words and definitions if they're good for you personally. Then, like Greg puts, I know that he puts in a lot of his sermons a note to himself: stay awake, and he just means stay awake to God's presence. So if you want to use it personally, there's a lot of benefit to that. But I'd be careful using it so much in public, because somebody else is already, you're one of them. Thing, and that, you want to avoid that. I mean, as peacemakers, we need to try to avoid that as much as possible. And one last thing on you said about on this subject about white people and white guilt and things like that. I think it was Cedric that said it really good. That there's in Christianity, there's two kinds of guilt. There's a guilt that leads to repentance, and then there's a guilt that leads to shame. And you need to avoid guilt that leads to shame as much as possible, because it's really it's not going to help anybody. It's just just useless.
Amen to that. One of the things that Greg has been very clear on whenever he discusses race, and in a sermon or just in any discussion, he's very clear that, like, we're not to look at the other human as the issue, as the problem, even those who are perpetrating the acts that we're trying to stand up against. There are powers and principalities at work. There are things that have chosen to reject the character of God, and those influences are at work and have been at work. And so he really wants us to understand that, like, we're not fighting against people, we're fighting against flesh and blood. And as I say fighting, I'm thinking of a couple of questions that we didn't get to in regards to that terminology. And so we've had people who follow us, who are a part of us, who say that we know that we are a nonviolent people, and that nonviolence and peacemaking is a core to our beliefs of who we are as a church body. And so why do we also use some of that warfare terminology? Why do we talk about it being a war? Why do we talk about it like fighting against one another? Why do we use that terminology when we are supposed to be peacemaking, peacekeeping people? And so we didn't get to that. We wanted to, but we didn't get a chance to. So I'm curious, like, does that ever trip you guys up, or have you heard that questioned before? Or what would you say to those who are like, hey, why do we use that terminology when that's not what we're about?
Well, I'll throw this out right away, is I think that even though we don't fight against other people, the enemy is personal. I think according to the scripture, Satan is a personal being, and Satan is wiser than any of other God's creatures. And he's very smart. He knows how people work. He knows how relationships work. He knows how we tick. And so a lot of the systems that we have in place, even though they're impersonal systems, they're there strategically to exploit what Satan knows about us as people. And so I think that when we do war against Satan, we're really kind of doing like introspective war and understanding how we're getting trapped. Why do we keep getting trapped into racist kind of biases? Why do we keep getting trapped into exploiting the poor? Why do we keep getting trapped into hoarding wealth? I mean, those are the systems that we're fighting against, and they're not people, they're systems, but they are personal in the sense that they exploit our personal flaws. And so, for example, I already talked about a couple already. As being a person of privilege, you're going to be more afraid of change. Well, guess what? If that's the case, well, that fear is something that can be exploited, and the systems tend to exploit that. And when you look at the history of Jim Crow, the history of politicians trying to get elected, they've always tapped into that fear. And so when we wake up to that flaw, we can defend against it. And so that's how I view that.
That's good, Dan. Thank you. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jerry?
Oh yeah, wow, Dan, good point. That fear is. I look at it like, and I've heard somebody say that to privileged people, equality sometimes looks like oppression. I was sitting in my car when somebody said that, and I was in a parking lot, and I watched the other car back out, and for a split second I felt like I was moving forward. Have you ever felt that?
Yeah, totally. I've had that. Yeah.
I think that's what it's like, and you have to avoid that, because you have to avoid feeling like that. Just because some people who have always been oppressed are starting to equalize, are starting to get privilege. That doesn't mean that you're moving backward.
Right.
It's just an illusion. Yeah. And fight that. But the more on the spiritual, the warfare analogies is that the Christianity and as well as a bunch of a lot of the other major religions talk about the spiritual realm. I mean, we live in a physical realm. We have a mind, and there is the realm of thought that used to go ignored until Freud and some Jung and some of the other early psychiatrists started teaching on these and helping people with mental issues. People didn't think that was even a valid approach to medicine. And but now we take it for granted that you can have mental ideas and get trapped in mental illness, but it's still the realm of the spirit. We see, because that's part that we know that's part of our reality, that there is a spiritual aspect to human life, as well as a mental and physical aspect of it. And in that spiritual reality, there are forces of darkness. MLK talked about it over and over again, and that's why we don't look at a human being as our actual enemy, even if he's in a hate group and dedicated to your destruction. He is being as manipulated as much as anyone else. As much as he's trying to manipulate, he is being manipulated, and he is to be set free from that. So
Amen.
That's
Amen.
And that is war. That takes those principalities and powers, those spiritual rulers, rulers in spiritual darkness, they don't go away easily, and the Bible talks about that in Daniel and in other places in the Bible, where these spiritual forces actually affected human outcomes because of their influence.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And I would just say, for those who get caught up on the verbiage, just understand, this isn't something we've made up. Like, this is stuff you read in the Bible. Like, there are battles, like the guys were just saying, there are spiritual forces at war with one another, their language. And what we are saying is when we fight against these things, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. But I just want to say, when we say fight and when we say go to battle, it's not the way in which the world interprets fight and go to battle. We're not out for blood of other humans. We are, sometimes we're fighting through prayer. Sometimes we're fighting through fasting. Sometimes we're fighting through different demonstrations that we do to try to stand up and speak out. We're fighting by loving others. We're fighting through the power of God, but it looks different than the ways in which the world fights. Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's the beauty about our community at Woodland Hills. And so many of you are part of that from near and afar. Like, we have so many different people who bring to the table their rich history, their life story, their experiences, and it's very diverse and it's amazing. One of the things I failed to mention when introducing Jerry today is that he's one of our elders. He is a part of the leadership team of our church and has been for several years. And so we have appreciated his wisdom and we have appreciated his insight. And when you are a part of this community and when you're a part of this leadership team, you have opportunity to speak up and push back and wrestle together with things. But we all know that we're coming from a place of mutual respect and love. And so I hope you see that when we engage in these conversations. But we also really wanted to highlight one of our leaders and someone who has a rich history and a rich backstory and is just a rich, amazing person. So with that, I'm going to toss it to Dan, who has some particular questions for you, Jerry. So for our last few minutes here, we're just going to put Jerry on the hot seat and just, no, not really. We're just going to hear Jerry's heart about some of who he is and his story.
Yeah, Jerry, I know that we had talked a little bit about kind of your upbringing, and I was just enthralled. And it was one of those things where it's like, I didn't want to hear too much because I wanted this to be on the MuseCast. So I want to hear, you told me that you grew up, at least part of your time growing up, you grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, I think of Omaha, Nebraska, I think, well, that's in the north. It's pasty white kind of community, a lot of Christianity there. And it's probably not, it's not really known as a racist hotbed, when we hear about racial reconciliation and social justice. But you seem to indicate that, no, it was pretty intense there as well. So I would love to hear your experience about growing up as a Black boy in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay, without trying to bore you with too many details, it was really rough. Omaha was segregated, but not in the way that you would find a lot of labeling, like colored only drinking fountains and things like that. But there was a distinct black part of town and a distinct white part of town. Now, the black part of town had brown people in it. It had indigenous people living there, but hardly any white people there unless they were very poor. But in the white part of town, there was none of these. You found no brown people, no black people, no Native Americans. It was just really lily white. And if you found yourself there, you were and you weren't working, pushing a broom or something of that nature, you could get pushed around. And and as a kid, my brothers and I, we worked on, we built a lot of model cars and things like that, and actually won some trophies. But cool. the good hobby shops were all in the white community, and so we didn't realize at the time that we were taking our lives in our hands. We just went, we caught a bus or walked to, there, and. A lot of times we were chased and threatened by white teenagers. I'm like 12 years old, and my friends were all about the same age. It would be 3 or 4 of us. We knew better than to go alone, so we went in a group like that. And but yeah, the white teenagers, 17, 18, would drive by and call us names, and then circle the block and come back and get out of, one or two of them would get out of the car and chase us down the street, and try to chase us back to our own neighborhood, but we'd run in the store that we were trying to get to and buy what we needed to get, and hopefully they weren't there, and hightail it back home.
Yeah.
But it was much of that going on. The segregation was coming, but not yet. And even at night in the black community, you really didn't want to be on the street, because back then, believe it or not, off-duty police officers were the biggest danger for us. They would ride around in squad cars, and obviously drunk, obviously inebriated. They and call out racial slurs and scare the heck out of us. I had seen when the Black Panthers started coming to town and setting up shop, that the white police would shoot out, would drive by and just shoot at their headquarters, and at barber shops where they hung out, shoot the windows out and that kind of thing. It's it was obvious. It was obvious, and that's just one of integrating our. I was the second year that our high school was integrated. Whew. It was like Ruby Bridges all over again.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, and the same thing with when we integrated, a bunch of us teenagers got tired of going to the black swimming pool that was so run down. It was just horrible, and so we tried to integrate. Well, we did integrate some of the white swimming pools that was close to our neighborhood, and walked there in groups. We got not only people shout racial slurs off of their porches as we walk through their neighborhoods, but some even shot us with BB guns.
Wow.
So it was hard. It was hard. Yeah.
I've heard and read so many accounts like that, but from your perspective, the harassment from white people, the fear, kind of the bullying from the police, how did you see that affect your black community members, the people around you?
It's really, really different for different people. The people that we knew that just couldn't be bullied. There's always going to be some guys, some women that just won't. You're not going to treat me like that. My dad was one of those people. He's a ex-Marine and real strong guy, a beef lugger by day, and hung. That's what he was known as, the guy who hung sides of beef during the day, and a bouncer tossed out sides of beef during at night. Yeah, he was one of those people, and my mom and the rest of us, we were proud of him, but at the same time very afraid that he was going to get hurt, because we knew people. I've gone to school with people who talked back to the police, and they were found hung in their jail cells, or beat so bad that they were unrecognizable, So wow. But then I remember when the black Muslims came into our neighborhood. All of those guys, Elijah Muhammad's followers, and Malcolm X's followers. Some people embraced that, and I thought of embracing it because personally, the words of Martin Luther King did not go well with me. They were love my enemies. It just sounded like so they can do whatever they want to us, and we're just gonna lay down and take it. But my mom always said that if you follow these black Muslims that say love your black brother and hate the white man, then you're gonna end up loving some people that are enemies of yours. If you judge that by the color of somebody's skin, then you're gonna also hate some people that are on your side that love you. So you just can't go that way, and that made sense to me. But when the Black Panthers came around, I was more drawn to them. Where my middle brother, it was three of us. We were all 1 year apart, and I'm the youngest of the three. My middle brother was he followed the teachings of MLK, and came home a lot of times with welts on his back from sit-ins and things like that. You know, where he got beat with billy clubs. But over time I saw that the violent approach faded and got imprisoned, where those that did things God's way got the attention of the cameras, and people saw the brutality that we were facing. So it took me a while to learn, but I finally saw the truth of it.
Yeah, it baffles me, because I remember I took a class in college on MLK and Malcolm X, and we read a lot of MLK stuff first, and then we read Malcolm X's autobiography, and I just remember thinking, Malcolm was just so much more proactive, you know, and he was just so much more like vibrant, like he was doing something, you know, he's not just sitting there taking it. And I remember thinking as a young college student, well, like if I were a Black youth experiencing these things, I would totally be drawn to this. And so I think it takes a great amount of wisdom to see beyond that initial the initial kind of like appeal of a violent sort of response. And Malcolm X wasn't really necessarily violent, but he was a lot more kind of oppositional than MLK was. The other thing that just baffles me, Jerry, is the fact that your dad was a Marine and was still treated like this by police and by white people, especially conservative white people who are all about the military and all about patriotism. And here you have somebody fighting for the country, and they get no respect, you know, after that. And that just baffles me. I'm curious how he experienced that kind of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it was what he'd grown up with. You know, he was from a different generation, and I know that he expected to come back to the States after Korea, and get some kind of honor, get some kind of respect.
Right.
But for things not to have changed at all for him, that really didn't surprise him. It was and the more I looked at it and saw how the GI Bill had helped whites finish college and buy homes, and my dad couldn't do any of that. I mean, it was just it took pressure, it took push to get to use some of the benefits that you that were owed after military service. And wow. My folks were not into that. And that was sad to me, that they wouldn't fight for their way of fighting was keep your nose down, work really hard. You got to work a full-time and a part-time job, and even take some night classes if you can. If that's how you get ahead in this world. And that's the way blacks have that's the way minorities have for millennia. We've always known that if you're in the minority, then you're gonna have to work twice as hard and be twice as good just to get the same treatment or slightly better. My mom, she worked at the same hospital in Nebraska, Methodist Hospital, all her life. I mean, to one job, her whole life, and she trained all of her supervisors. And her boss told her the last time she tried to get a promotion, said, as long as I'm the boss here, you will never be promoted.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing.
So that's that. When you get that kind of discouragement, that you lose hope.
Yeah.
You lose hope in change. You always believe, okay, so, and that's why one reason why I didn't embrace Christianity as a kid is because you just believe that pie and that all of this pie in the sky that's going to be better in the by and by.
Right.
That just sounds like something that the oppressor taught you to keep you quiet while you're waiting to die.
Yeah. Speaking of hope, I can't believe we're almost out of time here. So I really was hoping to do, Jerry Poindexter through the decades, but we didn't really get past the 1960s, unfortunately. However, what I would like to do is I would like to ask you, because you've seen the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and you've seen so much. And given how much you've seen, and you are just, I know you, that you are just so full of joy and love, and you've got a big family, and you've got these epic Thanksgiving get-togethers, and there's just so much joy and love in your life, and I know that about you, but how did you get from there to here, and what gives you hope, given everything that you've seen about racism in America? What gives you hope going forward, for your kids and your grandkids? And I think you said you have a great grandkid also.
Four.
Wow.
4 great grandchildren. Yep.
Wow.
No, I don't know. The Bible said, "Be fruitful and multiply." And the Poindexters, we have definitely done that. I'm so proud of my children, of my grandchildren, of my great grandchildren. They are my best friends. They are raising your best friends. That's what discipling really is, I loved the panel's response about hope, but I think that the one thing that I saw missing, which is what really gives me hope, is I look at the news from a historical perspective, and I think that the greatest injustice that we do is to this 20-minute news cycle. We blow it again and again and again by not looking at the news from a historical perspective. And we as people as Christians, we have God's history on earth in book form that even the early disciples didn't have, and they definitely didn't have it well written. It was such a verbal, what do you call a verbal
oral tradition?
Yeah, oral tradition. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, they. But what it shows that we see all throughout the Bible is all of these different cycles that keep happening over and over and over again, where the mega wealthy and the mega powerful lord it over the poor and the oppressed and the alien, but God's people. The people of God, when you turn your life over to Him, you see because you see life so clearly. Then you see your oppressor being oppressed. You see that, and we talk about how tough times are today. How with mass incarceration and global warming and nation against nation and I mean it looks like the end times all the time, and they thought it was like that during Hitler's time, that the world we're seeing the end of mankind. When Jesus came to the planet, the Romans ran everything. And they could kill you, they could throw you in the Colosseum, they could your life meant nothing. And if you were a woman, your life meant even less, and a child. You got to have a lot of children because so many of them are going to die, and it was almost like they did not even matter. But Jesus discipled 12 people, and the history, even from the Jews' perspective, said these 12 people are turning the world upside down. And now we mark time by the birth of Christ. Christianity is spread all over the world. The history of medicine owes itself to hospitals. The invention of the hospitals and our universities are all based in Christianity. Oh man, there's so many good books being written right now about just the effect that Christianity has had on the planet, and in art, in science, in literature. It's just it's amazing. So if those 12 can do that, and Jesus said that we will do even greater things, I got a lot of hope, because there's zillions of us now, man.
Yes.
China is full of Christians. We're huge. Muslims are coming to faith left and right. Oh, we just need to do the work. That's all.
Amen.
We just need to love like he loved, and we got MLK to even give us a modern day example of how it's done.
Thank you, Jerry, for sharing a bit of yourself and your heart and your mind with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this extended MuseCast. We hope that you learned and your heart was touched. And I would just say, darkness is prevalent, but we're called to be a light in that darkness. So be forces of light. Like Mr. Rogers said, his mom always told him, always look for the helpers. When you're seeing distressing images and things going, look for the helpers, because they're there, and they are, and they have been. And so I encourage us all to be a helper, to see the helpers, to recognize those beams of light shining in the darkness, and to give God glory and to trust him. So thank you all. Join us again this Sunday. We're going to get back into Sermon on the Mount, and then circle back with us next week, where we'll have another episode of the MuseCast where we unpack and further that conversation from Sunday's sermon. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Dan.